Thank you very much, Gigi. The cars have just left the grid on their formation lap ahead of the 8th round of this 2022 Formula One World Championship season. Max Verstappen leads the championship. He's 9 points ahead of Charles Leclerc in the standings and 15 points ahead of Sergio Perez, who is third in the championship. But on the grid, it's Leclerc on pole position, with Sergio Perez second and Max Verstappen in third place. Carlos Sainz is fourth in the Ferrari. Fifth will be George Russell in the Mercedes. Then it's Pierre Gasly in sixth in the AlphaTauri. Lewis Hamilton starts seventh. Then it's Tsunoda, Vettel and Alonso, the top 10.
Elbows out into turn one. Score to play for.
That's Sergio Perez being told to get his elbows out into the first corner. Try and overtake Charles Leclerc if you can and take the lead of the Grand Prix away. Outside of the top 10, it's Norris, Ricciardo, Ocon, Joe and Bottas top 15. Magnussen, Albon, Latifi, Stroll and Schumacher, the 20 drivers. All of the front runners starting on the medium tyres. The only drivers starting on the hards are Ricciardo, Ocon, Bottas, Stroll and Schumacher. Expecting a one-stop race, and this circuit that winds its way around the city streets of the capital of Azerbaijan on the shores of the Caspian Sea always has the potential to throw something a little bit unexpected into the mix, and Perez being G'd up there, Mark, right at the start.
Good feisty call from his engineer. We love to hear that sort of thing. I'm really excited for this one, Jack, because I can't call it. I don't know which way it's going to go, and that's something we've been crying out for in Formula One for many years now. We've got two teams, but even more so than that, 4 drivers within those 2 teams, any of which could really take this victory today. So, yeah, really looking forward to the first few corners. The run down to turn 1 is not that long here, but the run to the finish line at the end of the lap is one of the longest of the season. So, all to play for as we go into the first couple of corners.
One of the other key parts is that Red Bull, who are starting second and third with Perez and Verstappen, do have a straight line speed advantage over Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, who's starting on pole position. So if the Red Bulls can get close enough, they do have the speed to get ahead of the Ferrari potentially. But if Leclerc can keep them at arm's length, keep them more than a second behind so they don't get to use the drag reduction system and close in on the straights, then he may be able to see this one out for the win. The other part is 2 Red Bulls versus 1 Ferrari, because the other Ferrari in fourth is Carlos Sainz. Now, he's a driver who will be wanting to attack at the first corner too.
He will, yeah, he could still come into play here because he can force the hand of the second Red Bull by making an early pit stop, maybe trying to play their hand. So it's not that he's not going to come into play there. I think we think he's the less likely of the 4 perhaps to go for the top step of the podium, but he could still have a major outcome on the result of this race.
The cars now are coming along the main straight and taking their positions up on the starting grid. Jenny Gao.
Yes, the dash down to turn 1, just 140 metres, the shortest of any circuit. An air temperature higher than we've seen all weekend, 23.5 at the moment. Track temperature 50 degrees.
So Leclerc is going to be starting on the clean side of the grid, the side of the grid that all of the cars drive along, basically into the first corner. Although it's a little bit different in Baku because you kind of keep in the middle of the straight all the way down towards turn 1. So who is going to get the best launch? It's a 90-degree left-hander at the first corner, as Jenny says, just over 100 meters away from the start line. Then there's another 90-degree left-hander, and then there's quite a long straight up to the left-hander of turn 3. But if Perez gets the launch, he will have the inside line into the first corner. Charles Leclerc has been hemorrhaging points to Max Verstappen in the championship. It's been a 55-point swing over the last 4 races. This is the Ferrari driver's chance to get back into the championship fight. He's starting on pole position. Perez is alongside him. The lights go out and the race begins in Azerbaijan, and it's quite a slow start for Perez as he pulls up alongside, coming into turn 1, and Perez sends it and gets through. Sergio Perez takes the lead of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc had a big lockup, and he's under attack now from Max Verstappen. Carlos Sainz is right behind, and then it's George Russell, and Yuki Tsunoda's getting his elbows out and fighting, but Sergio Perez got the better start, took the lead of the race, and now Sainz is attacking Verstappen as they come up into turn 3. He looks to the outside. Verstappen holds the place. Leclerc is second. Verstappen is third. Sainz is fourth. A little look from George Russell trying to get ahead of Sainz, but he remains in 5th position ahead of Pierre Gasly in 6th place. Everybody safely through the first few corners, but that is exactly the start that Sergio Perez wanted. He leads the race.
Well, it was exactly what he was told to do, get his elbows out, and he did just that. Went down the inside. Charles Leclerc just overcooked it slightly, trying to defend, locked all of his front brakes up and slid wide, and it was left the door open, of course, for Perez to sail through. It's Verstappen, though, who's coming under increasing pressure from Carlos Sainz, the second of those two Ferraris. They're just separating out a little bit right now, but it's Perez from Leclerc, from Verstappen, and then Sainz.
They're all coming up now around the castle section, the old part of the circuit, a very quick part of the track with lots of long left-handers, and now they come into the tighter left-hander at turn 15, start to drop down the hill, one more left turn, and then it's 16, which brings them out onto the main start straight again, and we'll see how Sergio Perez is stretching his legs up at the front and whether Leclerc can stay with him. But Perez got a brilliant getaway, took the lead into the first corner, and now leads the race. Vettel got ahead of Yuki Tsunoda, and Lance Stroll made up a couple of places, but it's quite a big advantage for Perez as they come across the line at the end of lap 1. It's 1.3 seconds to Perez and Leclerc, and then it's only 0.6 of a second with Verstappen behind. So Verstappen is closer to Leclerc than Leclerc is to Perez. Tsunoda is defending from Lando Norris coming into the first corner. There's also a fight going on between Alex Albon and Valtteri Bottas, but Perez has the lead and fairly comfortable at the moment. Lap 2 of 51 in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Yeah, Perez making great use of that clear air ahead of him. It's Verstappen who's now on the charge and putting Leclerc under pressure. So Sainz dropping back slightly, just slightly from the first 3 cars, but now it's the lead Red Bull from the lead Ferrari, but a gap between the two, and I feel like Verstappen's going to start to really push and put pressure on Leclerc.
Perez's initial getaway was not particularly notable. It was Verstappen who got the best start, but then in sort of the second phase of the start, Perez just breezed up and past the Ferrari. It was quite a strange one.
He did, yeah. All on the medium tyre, so no tyre advantage at this stage of the race for any of the top 4. And tyre degradation, although it's not a major part of the race strategy plan here, we're looking at a one-stop race in the most part. The Ferraris traditionally this season haven't been the best at tyre deg, so it's the Red Bulls that have had that in their back pocket as a small advantage. So I just wonder how the race, as it goes on, will it just start to favour Red Bull being able to run a little bit longer? Of course, Red Bull have 2 cars right at the very front, as we said, in this race, whereas Charles Leclerc fighting almost single-handedly just a little bit.
Yep, and Leclerc is now in second. We're just having another look at his lockup into the first corner. It's not huge, the flat spot that he got from that, but it will be notable and noticeable for the Ferrari man in second place. Across the line they come to complete the second lap of the Grand Prix. Sergio Perez is out in front, and his advantage to Leclerc grows to 1.8 seconds. Verstappen is still there, just 0.7 of a second back. So pretty soon, when the DRS opens, he may be able to use it to attack Charles Leclerc for second place. Carlos Sainz is not close enough yet in the fight. George Russell is running 5th in the Mercedes, ahead of Pierre Gasly in 6th, Hamilton, Vettel, Tsunoda and Alonso with the rest of the top 10. And then it's Norris in 11th, Ricciardo 12th, Ocon, Zhou, Albon the top 15, Magnussen, Bottas, Stroll, Latifi and Schumacher the 20 drivers.
And those gaps at the front could be crucial at the end of this lap. It's at the end of this lap when we'll get DRS enabled, and at the moment the gap from Perez to Leclerc is over 2 seconds. That's too big. The gap from Verstappen to Sainz 1.6, nearly 1.7 seconds, yet the gap from Verstappen to Leclerc, the guy chasing down the second place, the lead Ferrari, Max Verstappen, only 0.7. So when DRS gets enabled, we already know that Red Bull have a straight line speed advantage. When they get onto that long straight out of turn 16, a flat out section, the longest we have anywhere on the Formula 1 calendar, that DRS could well enable Max Verstappen to catapult his way past Leclerc, putting the 2 Red Bulls in prime position for this race. Let's see.
Here comes Leclerc now, down towards turn 15, which is the highest point on the circuit, and then starts the drop down the hill towards the Caspian Sea.
This is going to be interesting here. Max Verstappen very close behind Charles Leclerc. They're just coming out of turn 16 now, so now it's just flat out. It's all about power unit performance. How much drag have you got on the car all the way down this very long run? And I feel like Verstappen is in a position here to start really putting Leclerc under pressure.
Down towards the first corner, then they come, and Verstappen is closing in on the back of Charles Leclerc for second place, but he's not going to be close enough this time as they come into the first corner. There's been wicket in the cricket, Ellie Oldroyd.
And Alex Lees is out. Terrific innings by him, very positive attitude by England this morning, but finally New Zealand take a catch. Daryl Mitchell snaffling him at first slip off the bowling of Matt Henry. He's out for 67. Ollie Pope is still there on 73. England 147 for 2, 406 behind New Zealand.
In the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, it's Sergio Perez leading the way, 2.2 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc. Max Verstappen is third. He's just 0.7 back from Leclerc. The two McLarens are fighting over 11th and 12th positions. Norris is ahead of Ricciardo. Ricciardo's on the hard tyres, but he's trying to overtake his teammate. Jenny Gow.
Yes, Nicholas Latifi in the Williams has a 10-second stop-go penalty. He's just come in to serve that. One of his team members touched the car too late on the starting procedure, so he's in the pit lane having to serve 10 seconds. It must feel like an eternity.
It was quite a sloppy error that from Williams, from that sort of one mechanic who just sort of came on and rolled the car back.
Red Bull looks quick.
Carlos Sainz with an incredibly insightful observation there, saying Red Bull is quick. He's the Ferrari driver in 4th place.
Yeah, the rule on the grid is that all members of the team have to be well clear of the car with 15 seconds to go, and that normally is counted down in everybody's radio, so there's a very strict procedure that every team follows. So it's difficult to just blame the one mechanic. Who knows whether the communication had broke down, but yeah, a real error that will have cost him dearly.
Right, here we go again, down the main straight. Max Verstappen closing in on the back of Charles Leclerc for 2nd place. Perez comes across the line, still in the lead of the Grand Prix. Then here comes Leclerc, and Verstappen is closing in. He's got the DRS, and he's just a bit too far away this time. I think the closing speed is pretty big, but he gets right under the rear wing of Leclerc. He's not close enough. He's going to have another... Oh, big twitch from Leclerc on the exit of turn 2. The back end of the Ferrari sliding, and that could give Verstappen an opportunity coming into turn 3 now. They've come through the left-hander of 2, and now they're on the 2nd main straight. Leclerc looks across into his left wing mirror to see where Verstappen is and whether he's close enough. The answer is no at the moment, but Leclerc is going to have his work cut out to keep Verstappen behind him here.
Yeah, Verstappen needs to be patient. He's got the legs on Leclerc. It looks clearly in race conditions, certainly at this phase of the race with the cars heavy on fuel, that the 2 Red Bulls, as Carlos Sainz noted his team earlier, the 2 Red Bulls faster than the 2 Ferraris. So Verstappen, I think, can afford to be patient and just keep within that 1 second gap as they come around towards the end of the lap and use the DRS along the really long straight. That's where the overtaking opportunity is.
So at the moment, Verstappen's in 3rd, trying to get past Leclerc. Perez out in front. What do Red Bull do? Do they let Perez go and try and win this race?
I think we're a long way from that at the moment. I can't imagine that. I can't imagine that if Perez is leading and Verstappen is 2nd, that they let Perez win. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Onto the brakes now into turn 15, and Verstappen is a little bit closer this time than he was last time to the back of Charles Leclerc, so he could have an opportunity on this run down the start-finish straight, and I think he's going to have a really good opportunity here. Max Verstappen through the left-handers at turn 18, right-hander at turn 19. Now coming up to 200 miles an hour, he pings the DRS open and gains more and more speed and closes in on the back of the Ferrari. He's right in the slipstream, hits 210 miles an hour, 215 miles an hour as he gets closer and closer, but not close enough to the Ferrari to make an overtake into the 1st corner. So Leclerc holds 2nd place at the moment, and Perez is still in the lead, only 2.2 seconds up the road, so he's just managing that gap at the moment. Sergio Perez just keeping it at 2 seconds. He's not under any pressure from behind, and he can just take it steady relatively. Yeah,
decent job from Perez. And interestingly, the battle between Leclerc and Verstappen not really affecting their overall pace. They're dropping Carlos Sainz at a reasonable rate here. Sainz now 3.7 seconds back from these two fighting over 2nd place. But that was interesting that the DRS along that long straight didn't seem to have quite the dramatic impact that I thought it might. What's been really interesting over this weekend is how Ferrari have had to change the direction of their development a little bit and try and drop some of that drag that's been holding them back. They've been putting a lot of work into increasing their top speed and minimising the deficit, particularly through this final sector that they've suffered to Red Bull. It seems to be paying off at this stage.
Kevin Magnussen has just got ahead of Alex Albon and is up into 15th place. Lewis Hamilton is stuck behind Pierre Gasly at the moment in their fight over 6th position. The Mercedes right behind the AlphaTauri, but Hamilton not able to make a move yet as they come around the top part of the circuit at turn 12 and then start to drop down towards turn 15. Hamilton closed in half a second on that last lap, so he'll want to make the move sooner rather than later. Verstappen is out onto the main straight again, right behind Leclerc. Again, he'll get the DRS, but maybe a little too far back on this particular occasion. See whether Hamilton can make the move on Gasly this time as they come out through the left-hand turn at 16. Verstappen is the sound you can hear, but again, he looks a bit too far back from the Ferrari. It's all very well having the DRS and the slipstream, but You've got to be close enough coming out onto the main straight to use it, and Verstappen is not there yet, but these two having a great fight over second place.
This is the sort of thing, though, that as the Ferrari, if they do start to suffer more tyre degradation than the Red Bull, it might start really affecting the rear end. It's all about traction, this circuit, particularly the first two sectors. It takes quite a lot out of the tyres in terms of launching out the slow corners. If tyre deg becomes an issue for Ferrari, getting that exit out of corner 16, the final real corner on the circuit, that's the exit that you need clean. You need to be nice and clean and tidy so that you can catapult yourself down the long straight. And only one little error, that's all it will need for Verstappen to really be able to pounce. They are right behind each other. Verstappen right under the rear wing of the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc right now.
Yeah, great fight between the Scarlet Ferrari in second place and the blue with yellow flashes Red Bull running in third position. As they swing left now into the tight left-hander at turn 8, the narrowest point on any Grand Prix circuit.
And we think Perez in front is struggling with traction.
That's Leclerc being told. We think Perez in front is struggling with traction. So that's the rear tyres that Mark was talking about. When Perez is trying to put the power down, it's not going well for him, is what Ferrari believe is happening to Sergio Perez. And that's just a little bit of a, I don't know, a sort of a don't worry, you're not the only one struggling here potentially. He got very, very slidey coming out of 16, Charles Leclerc.
I wonder if that's enough. I wonder if that's enough to let Verstappen just get a little bit more speed along the straight. It's a little bit twitchy, wasn't it, coming out the final corner, just as we talked about. Is it going to be enough to allow Verstappen to get right up under the rear wing? Along the main straight they go, DRS open for Leclerc. No such advantage for, for Verstappen. No such advantage for Leclerc. Oh, not quite. Not quite, again.
Verstappen still in third position, up behind Charles Leclerc. They come into the left-hander now of turn 2. We'll just see whether he's able to get close coming into the next left-hander at turn 3, which is the sort of, the straight is about half as long as the main straight, but it is still fairly lengthy. Perez leading the Grand Prix on lap 8 of 51. Leclerc holding second. Verstappen right behind him in third. Then there's a big gap back to Carlos Sainz in fourth place, Russell in fifth. Hamilton actually is coming under pressure from Vettel more than he's putting Gasly under pressure now, and these are the McLarens.
If this is his best pace, I've got more. Understood.
That's Daniel Ricciardo, Jenny, saying, I'm quicker than my teammate.
Yeah, they're having a right old squabble back there. Daniel Ricciardo all over the back of Lando Norris's teammate, but the team saying, look, hold your position behind Lando, even though they're on different strategies. At the moment, it's Norris who's on a medium tyre and Ricciardo on the hard tyre, but they have told him, stay there, even though you have more pace.
Well, Ricciardo is playing the longer game, basically, in the course of the Grand Prix. When everyone pits on from the medium tyres, Ricciardo will be staying out for longer and doing a shorter second half of the race, basically on his second set of tyres. So even if they let him through, it doesn't really achieve much at the moment, unless they really think that they can catch and pass Fernando Alonso. Race leaders out onto the start-finish straight again. Sergio Perez still 2 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc. They're all lapping pretty much identically, a 1 minute 48.7 for every single one of the top 3 on that last lap. And Verstappen looks too far back still to make an overtake into the first corner. Lap 9 of 51. We're expecting the pit stops to come around about lap 18, somewhere in the late teens, early 20s. But it'll be, they're all...
Just keep the patience up, Max. Nothing's running away from you up front. The gap is building behind.
And that's Verstappen being told, keep your patience, because Perez in the race lead is not getting away. He's not disappearing. And if anything, Leclerc is probably still in undercut territory of Sergio Perez. There's only 2 seconds between them. So whoever comes in first will get the fresher tyres for a lap and in theory gain the position in the pit stop. So it's all very, very tight between these top 3.
Well, it is, but this is exactly where Red Bull have the major advantage, don't they? They've dropped Sainz out of this fight. He's now 7 seconds back.
Sainz is off. Sainz is off. Sainz has made a mistake in the first sector. I think that's at the right-hander of turn 7, and Carlos Sainz has gone straight on. George Russell is now up into 4th place, but the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz has taken himself out of the equation, going into the runoff area. He's not hit the barriers, but he's just gone straight on down an escape road.
Break by right of Something failed.
Something failed, says Sainz. He's still sitting in the car, but that is bad news for Ferrari. It's not a disaster, because Leclerc's still in the race in 2nd place, and Sainz was only in 4th, but it is not good news that their second driver is out of the running.
No, it's not. It's bad news. Of course, it's bad news. But I don't think Carlos Sainz was too much in this fight at the front anyway. They were dropping him at quite a rate. Maybe that was to do with something failing gradually on the car. But we're just seeing a replay of how he came to a stop, because we haven't seen it yet. Oh, it looked... Yeah, so he changed down coming into the right-hander, and there was a horrible clunk. Sounded mechanical, like bits of metal clunking against each other, as they shouldn't, and he ground to a halt. So that's one Ferrari out of the race. Perhaps you could argue he was already out of the fight anyway, but that leaves two Red Bulls
and Leclerc
very
pits.
firmly.
Charles Leclerc pits.
He does, yeah.
From second place, because the virtual safety car is deployed. This might be an unbelievable strategy call from Ferrari. It's very slow leaving the pit lane.
Slow stop.
5.4 seconds, but those 3 seconds that he lost there might be mitigated by the fact that he's pitting under virtual safety car when everybody else will then have to pit under normal conditions, and you lose more time. Russell does the same. You lose more time pitting under normal conditions than you do under virtual safety car. Hamilton in as well, so Mercedes double stacking down there. And, well, after Ferrari cost Leclerc with some woeful tyre strategy in Monaco a few weeks ago, they might have just played a blinder here, because that was instantaneous, that reaction. Jenny Gao.
Yeah, saving yourself about half of the amount of time it takes to pit stop. So instead of coming in and stopping for 20 seconds, they're coming in and doing about 10 seconds. But everybody's pit stop's really slow at the moment. You look at about 3.5, 4.5 for the average pit stop there, which is a lot longer than usual. But they're going to win after this and save themselves a lot. They can get to the end of the race on a hard at this point in time, or flick onto the soft towards the end of this race and really go for it.
I'm not really sure what the delay was for Leclerc, to be honest. It was weird. All the tyres were changed, but they just didn't kind of lower him down off the jacks. But so Leclerc has made a pit stop and is in third place. Perez is leading, Verstappen is second. Now, what will be interesting is if the virtual safety car is still out at the end of this lap.
Did he have a free stop?
No, most of the field has pitted, but yes, he has had a free stop. He's in P3.
How many laps are left?
42, including this one.
So that's Verstappen saying, did he get a free stop? And the answer is he did, because the virtual safety car is ending. Now the track goes green, just as Perez and Verstappen are coming around the final corner towards the pit lane. So Ferrari reacting superbly there, pitting Leclerc. And we'll see how that pans out. But that Verstappen saying is it's not a free pit stop exactly, but it is one where you're losing 10 seconds instead of 20 seconds, as Jenny alluded to.
Yeah, two interesting points there. First of all, Verstappen, of course, with Red Bull, had the opportunity to cover Leclerc. Verstappen was behind Leclerc when he peeled into the pits. They had the opportunity to do the same thing with one car whilst leaving the other car out on the circuit and split their strategies. I'm surprised they didn't do that. But secondly, I wonder if this is a masterstroke or not. Of course, they saved the time in the pit stop. Leclerc's now got a long way to go on the hard tyre, whereas Verstappen still has plenty of pace on the medium. He now has a clear track in front of him, where he was previously being held up by Charles Leclerc. The two Red Bulls now lead the race. Do they even consider switching those two around? So this could actually still go either way. I'm not convinced that's an absolute no-brainer. I am surprised they didn't split the strategies.
So Perez leading the Grand Prix, 2.1 seconds now ahead of Max Verstappen, who's second in the Red Bull. Charles Leclerc is 12 seconds back, but has made a pit stop. Can he keep going for the remainder of the Grand Prix, as you say? That's going to be the interesting question. Russell in fourth has pitted. Alonso in fifth has not. Norris in sixth has not. Ricciardo in seventh has not.
The interesting...
And Vettel got Hamilton at the pit stops because Mercedes double stacked Russell and Hamilton. Vettel was able to get in front.
One of the things that will have swayed Charles Leclerc and Ferrari's decision, of course, is there were only a few runners that started this race on the hard tyre. Jenna Ricciardo being one of those, who had great pace. If you remember, he was all over the back of his teammate Lando Norris on the medium. So the harder tyre seemingly being able to get fired up relatively quickly and delivering quite good pace early on in the race on these heavy cars. Charles Leclerc already going very quickly on that fresh set of hard tyres. So let's see how that performance goes early on, but how long can it last?
Across the line comes Sergio Perez, lap 11 and 51, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix here on BBC Radio 5 Live. That's Mark Priestley alongside myself, Jack Nichols, and Jenny Gao. In an hour and a half, we'll be bringing you full commentary of the Nations League match between Northern Ireland and Cyprus. Ali Bruce Ball and Jerry Taggart will be bringing us coverage there. And Lando Norris is ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, and now trying to close in on Fernando Alonso for 5th position. The Alpine and the 2 McLarens all yet to pit, Jenny.
Yeah, it's interesting just looking at Alonso and Norris. They started on the mediums. Now pretty much everybody else on a medium starting tyre decided to come in, pit and go out onto the hards. But this is versus McLaren versus Alpine. They're in a really hard battle here. And I wonder if they just got distracted by their sort of inter-team battle and battles to not come in and pit. It seems a strange move for them. And just to let you know that Charles Leclerc's engineer has been on to him saying, look after these hard tyres. That's now the aim of the game. If you're on these hard tyres and switch, you need to eat them out to make them last all the way to the end of this race.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one for Leclerc. Like Mark said to me, it was, wow, is that a genius call from Ferrari? But we won't know until the end of the race, because the teams will know there's a window, isn't there, where it's worth pitting under virtual safety car. If the virtual safety car comes on lap 1, you don't just automatically pit because it's way too early and it's a waste of your life. Whereas was lap 10, 11 in that window? Some teams presumably thought it was. Other teams, potentially like McLaren, didn't think it was worth it.
It must have been right on the edge of that window, given the split we've seen up and down the grid. They have very clever, very detailed and advanced software systems that make these predictions, that run simulations every few seconds to get these answers.
Fernando, an update for you. Everyone in front, apart from Alonso and the Red Bulls, took it. Those who did have got to do a bad 1-stop or convert to a 2-stop.
Okay, so McLaren basically saying that not they're in trouble, but that everyone who's done that, i.e. Ferrari and Leclerc, they're either going to have a bad 1-stop strategy or have to do a 2-stop strategy. So McLaren seem pretty happy with their decision not to come into the pits.
Yeah, it's interesting, and just looking at the tyres that everyone has left, none of the top 4 have a new set of softs available, so it's not like they could come in late on and go for a really fast final run with a brand new set of softs. They do have a set of mediums that they all started on, so no more new tyres available in terms of mediums for any of the top 4. So a 2-stopper, probably less preferable, but they have got to eke out these hard tyres for those runners for a long way. I wonder if Russell, given that he's not in that fight at the front, this might have worked out nicely for him, sitting in 4th place, having made a pit stop, if he can get to the end.
Oh, Sebastian Vettel's just made a mistake. He tried to get past Fernando Alonso and went in too hot into the left-hander of turn 3, and now has ended up, instead of getting ahead of, sorry, it was Ocon, my apologies, instead of getting ahead of Ocon for 9th, he's dropped down to 12th place. He managed to keep it out the barriers, did a very quick recovery Yui in the runoff area, but he's dropped down the order, and that is good news for Hamilton, because he can now try and attack Esteban Ocon. Frustrating one there for Vettel, because he had the move made, to be honest, pretty comfortably.
He did, yeah. It was well into the break. It was well past, wasn't he? It was just, he just broke too late by the look of it, went in too deep, and in his little pirouette to get himself out the escape road, he came millimetres away from the wall, but got away with it.
So, Perez leading the Grand Prix. Max Verstappen is in 2nd place. The gap between them is down to 1.2 seconds now. So that's interesting. Leclerc sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix as he comes across the line now. So Charles Leclerc, the fastest runner in the top 3, well, on the track, and closing in on Verstappen in front, and Verstappen is only 1.2 seconds back from Perez. So what's going to happen with the Red Bulls now? That's when we turn our attention to potential team orders. Is Perez told to get out of the way? Do they pit him a bit earlier? What do Red Bull do here with Perez leading and Verstappen in 2nd place and Leclerc closing in on them both in 3rd on a different strategy?
Well, normally what you do is you would give your lead car the prime opportunity to take the pit stop when suits strategy best, but it is an opportunity to switch your drivers around. So if we see Perez drop out of the lead and into the pits for a sort of unscheduled or slightly early stop, that could well be the reason. But the gap now between Verstappen and Leclerc coming down, it was around 12.5 seconds, nearly 13 seconds just after the pit stop, now just over 11 seconds. So those hard tyres at this stage working well for Leclerc, but he has been told to look after them, so he won't be able to keep this pace up for the entire Grand Prix, which is of course where he needs to take them if he's going to do this on a 1-stopper.
Verstappen, meanwhile, is within a second of Sergio Perez for the lead, so he's going to have the DRS this time as they come out down the start-finish straight. There's Well, he's going half a second quicker on this lap, Verstappen, so he's closing in on the back of his teammate, and he might be able to make an overtaking opportunity here. They're coming down into the first corner. Is Perez just going to let Verstappen past? He comes down into turn 1, and Verstappen goes to the inside and takes the lead of the Grand Prix. Max Verstappen gets ahead of Sergio Perez, takes the lead of the race. Unclear how much that was managed by Red Bull. We haven't heard any team radio or anything, so can't quite make up my mind.
Well, Sergio didn't fight it too hard, but he has fought back. He started to get a bit feisty immediately on the next straight, so it doesn't look like he's at least wanting to look like he was doing it, giving up easily.
Yeah, Verstappen takes the lead then of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Perez is second, Leclerc is third, still lapping. He was 2 seconds quicker almost on that last lap than Verstappen and Perez. So Leclerc is rapid on these new hard tyres. Russell is fourth, Alonso is fifth, Norris is sixth, Ricciardo, Gasly, Ocon and Hamilton are the rest of the top 10. Jenny Gow.
Yeah, we've seen a few times now that these hard tyres take quite a long time to get up to operating temperatures, but when they do, boom, they just come in, and that's what's happened with Leclerc. It was a slow warm-up, took a couple of laps, maybe a lap and a half to get them up to temperature, but now he's found his groove and he is absolutely going for it out there. Russell on the hards as well.
Yeah, he really has. I wonder how Lewis Hamilton's feeling. Once again, sort of strategy just not quite falling his way. Having to double stack cost him a couple of places in the pit stop, whereas his teammate Russell, it seems to have worked out really nicely for him. He's in fourth place. He's a long way back from the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, but he's got a 6-second gap behind him to Alonso. Alonso on the mediums, but Russell having made that pit stop now on the hards, and seemingly they're working quite well for him. Hamilton
is right on the tail of Esteban Ocon in the fight over ninth place. As you say, he's then 6 seconds back from Pierre Gasly, which is where he was fighting earlier on. And just getting a replay of his Perez's radio.
No fight.
No fighting was the message to Sergio Perez. So that sort of explains that one. Perez didn't cover the inside. He could have fought Verstappen harder, but he was told no fighting. And it wasn't exactly move out of the way, though. It wasn't get out of the way.
That's exactly what that means.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it means.
It wasn't like fully back off on the straight and move aside.
No.
It's a nuanced difference, but I think there's a bit of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, they do. It does give them this opportunity to use Perez as a buffer, of course, with Leclerc now closing down. Look, 7 seconds the gap now at Charles Leclerc. So still that fastest race lap, Leclerc on the hard tyres. He's flying and closing the gap to the two Red Bulls. So to give Verstappen a little bit of breathing space, Perez now sits between the two. But I wonder how long they will sacrifice Perez for, leaving him out, because essentially what they could be doing here is losing a potential 1-2 for Red Bull by sacrificing one of their drivers in favour of their so-called lead driver, Max Verstappen.
Perez was really slow on that last lap, 1 minute 51.7, so that was sort of 3 seconds slower than Charles Leclerc. So
what often happens though in a moment like that, you get the wind sucked out of you as a driver. You've just been told essentially you're not going to win this race, mate. No matter if you're leading the race, you're doing a great job, but you're not going to win it, so move out of the way. And that can have a huge impact on your lap times, because you just lose that grit, determination, that tiny little bit of edge.
Thank you.
So that's Joe, who has been let past by Valtteri Bottas. Joe has pitted, and Red Bull are coming out into the pit lane, and I think it's for Perez. Sergio Perez into the pits. A new set of hard tyres will be going on Sergio Perez's car, lap 17 of 51. And that's an interesting one, so I wonder how long Verstappen will stay out now, because it's slow for Perez. Finally he gets away. Again, I wasn't sure where the slow part was. 5.7 seconds, lost 3 seconds in the pit stop.
Yeah, right front wheel seemed like the gunman had a bit of trouble with the gun getting the wheel nut done up on the new wheel, so a bit of confusion. It's unusual, isn't it, for Red Bull? So slick in their pit stops normally, but that will have cost. It comes out in front of George Russell, so not too tragic, but of course the gap now to Charles Leclerc is up at 18 seconds between Perez and the Ferrari of Leclerc.
George Russell did his best lap of the Grand Prix on that last tour, but another second delay for Perez, and he would have come out behind George Russell. So Verstappen is still leading the Grand Prix, And yeah, it was the right front, as you said. But then there was a long delay after the right front too.
Yeah, total confusion. Once something goes wrong, it can often throw everyone else into slight disarray. Do you know, this race could well come down now to who manages these harder tyres. We're going to get Verstappen at some point having to pit for the hard tyres. He's going to lose position, track position to Leclerc. That then means he's going to have significantly less life on those tyres, or sorry, less usage on those tyres as they come towards the end of the Grand Prix. Presumably better performance. So how much is Leclerc taking out of the tyres now, and how much benefit will Verstappen see by putting them on so much later? It could come down to that.
So Verstappen leads but has yet to stop. Leclerc is in second place, has stopped. Perez is in third place, has stopped. Kevin Magnussen has just made a move around the outside of Valtteri Bottas at turn 1, and getting into that is now 14th place for Kevin Magnussen. Everybody is queued up behind Fernando Alonso here over 5th position. So the Alpine driver has it at the moment, but Norris has got a good run on him. Then these two haven't stopped yet. Alonso, Norris and Ricciardo in this train. 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is Pierre Gasly, who's in the 8th place, and he's in the queue as well. But the Alpine is quick in a straight line, and the McLarens are finding it hard to close in, even with the DRS. Norris isn't able to make an overtake on Fernando Alonso as they come into the first corner. Also behind, Esteban Ocon is still holding off Lewis Hamilton. So both of the Alpine cars really, really fast in a straight line, and that means that everybody else can't get ahead of them, and they're kind of rolling roadblocks.
Yeah, it's a real trait of that car. They've been consistently one of the quickest through the speed traps all weekend, and that's exactly what we're seeing. When it comes to race day, of course, no matter what lap time you end up generating, if you can hold cars behind you by having that extreme top speed, you can defend or you can overtake. So here goes Hamilton.
He's finally going to get Esteban Ocon up the inside into turn 3, and Lewis Hamilton gets into 9th place after following the Alpine around for a long, long time. He's now got to try and find 7 seconds to that previously mentioned Alonso, Norris, Ricciardo, Gasly fight. Obviously, Alonso, Norris and Ricciardo have to pit again. Gasly does not, so Hamilton and Gasly are on the same strategy, and Hamilton was right behind Gasly earlier on. Verstappen is going to come into the pits on this lap then, so he hasn't stayed out a huge amount of time longer, only a couple of laps longer than Perez. I mean, I don't think he's in undercut danger from Perez, but he hasn't extended it a lot.
It feels like they're sort of in no man's land a little bit with the strategy, because they didn't take the option to pit when Charles Leclerc did. There was slight confusion on the right rear wheel of Verstappen's pit stop there. The gunman having to go in twice with the wheel gun just to make sure that nut was tight. Luckily they didn't hold the pit stop up for too long, but you never like to see that, somebody not being 100% sure that a wheel was done up.
So Verstappen comes out onto the track again, and he is ahead of Sergio Perez. So lap 19 of 51, Perez sets the fastest lap of the race, but Charles Leclerc's lead is 13.6 seconds. Fernando Alonso pits from that 5th position that he was holding ahead of the McLaren, so that releases the McLarens of Norris and Ricciardo. They've got Gasly right behind them still, but Leclerc is leading. 13.6 seconds is the advantage he has over the Red Bulls. Nobody has to pit again. So now it's just a case of Verstappen's got to try and close that down over the remaining 30 laps.
In theory, nobody has to pit again, but the guys who made the pit stop under that virtual safety car do have quite a long way to go on a set of hard tyres. And interestingly, we didn't see much running on the hard tyres throughout Friday practice. We saw the McLarens doing quite a considerable amount of time on them, so they have some data. Other teams, of course, have been monitoring that, but not many people have too much experience on the hard tyre, and yet people like Charles Leclerc have to go a very, very long way on them. So I think it's a bit of an unknown territory that we're going to be heading into in the closing stages of this race for those guys.
Mark Priestley, the former McLaren mechanic, alongside me, Jack Nicholls and Jenny Gow.
Yeah, Norris currently in P5 for McLaren. He's on the medium tyres. That's what he started on. I think he's going to have to come in and pit and go onto the hard tyres pretty soon. And just confirmation, Carlos Sainz out in the Ferrari. They had a hydraulic problem.
Okay, hydraulics the problem for the Ferrari team. I wonder a little bit now if the not letting Ricciardo ahead of Norris is hurting Ricciardo's race. Once the McLarens got into clear air, it feels like that is costing Ricciardo. When they were all in a train earlier on in the early stages of the Grand Prix, then it doesn't really make any difference because everyone will get out of Ricciardo's way effectively. But because we had the virtual safety car and some people pitted, it hasn't kind of worked out like that. So Ricciardo's, I think, just getting compromised really behind Norris.
He is, but he'll get freed up in a moment because, of course, we are into that territory now where here he goes. In fact, he's going to get past. Is he? Yes. No, not quite. Almost right up underneath the rear wing of his teammate Lando Norris. But Lando Norris, as Jenny just said, will have to pit very soon. We talked about those one-stoppers who started on the medium tyre having to make their pit stop around lap 18, 19, 20. We're on lap 20 now, so we can expect the lead McLaren to peel into the pits, which will then free up Daniel Ricciardo. We'll get a first opportunity to see what sort of pace he's got on those harder tyres.
That was a bit of a weird one for Ricciardo. It was almost like the DRS seemed to close very early, coming down into turn 1. So that's why I thought it was being a bit manufactured and they were swapping places, but then they didn't. It was a very strange one. Let's get an update from the cricket. Ellie Oldroyd.
And Joe Root's on 15 already, the England captain, former England captain rather, he's on 16. Sorry to correct myself twice in 2 seconds. 16 not out, Joe Root. Ollie Pope still on 79, kind of slowed down a little bit in the last few minutes since losing Alex Lee's partner in a partnership of 141 for the second wicket. But England 171 for 2. They are ticking along pretty well as we approach lunch here at Trent Bridge. Still, of course, a long way behind. 382 runs the deficit for England against New Zealand. 171 for 2.
Charles Leclerc has blown up from the lead of the Grand Prix. Smoke pouring out of the back of the Ferrari. And another dismal weekend for the Monegasque man. He's out of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
Problem, engine.
We'll come back to you.
Done. No, that's done.
Smoke pouring from the back of the Ferrari. He rolls back into the pit lane with no power at all. And from the lead of the race, and a fairly comfortable lead, the second time this has happened this season after Barcelona earlier on this year, Charles Leclerc is out. And once again, the championship looks to be going more in Max Verstappen's favour. He's going to take a huge lead if he can hold on and take the win now. He's 4.4 seconds ahead of Sergio Perez, 8 seconds back to Russell. It's a disaster for Leclerc and for Ferrari. Both Ferraris out with reliability problems.
Well, what a dismal weekend that's turning out to be, and the only thing that can now stop Red Bull is Red Bull themselves. They've got no real challenge. George Russell in third place is a good 8 seconds back, and we know he hasn't got a car capable of challenging the Red Bulls in terms of pure pace. So Red Bull can now just start to ease up all of those pressures about the potential poor decision in terms of making the pit stop or not under that virtual safety car that Ferrari, on the face of it, seemed to get so right. None of that matters anymore. It's Verstappen leading Perez with a big gap back to George Russell, and no Ferraris left in this fight.
Lando Norris has pitted. Meanwhile, in the two McLarens fight, that Norris has pitted, and Ricciardo then was under pressure from Pierre Gasly, so they're fighting. Listen to this. This is Leclerc's engine.
That's not running on all of its cylinders anymore, is it?
No. you heard it go, and the power drop. And then the engine switch off. And Leclerc walking back to the pit lane now. And this is turning into quite a remarkable season. A driver with 6 pole positions in the first 8 races, and he is going to be potentially more than 30 points down in the championship fight. Jenny.
Such heartbreak, and I just wonder how hard Ferrari were having to run the engine to try and counter the Red Bull pace. We know on a Saturday it's been advantage Ferrari, Sunday advantage Red Bull, and it just seems like maybe they've pushed it too hard. The engine went pop. Absolutely disastrous for Ferrari and Charles Leclerc's championship ambitions. I mean, they're just... This is another weekend where Ferrari seem to crumble.
Yeah, we talked earlier on in the season, didn't we, about Red Bull reliability being costing them so many points. Verstappen not finishing a couple of races, and how it's turned around. I mean, one of Ferrari's strengths so far this season has been its engine performance, particularly out of the slow speeds corners, the punch that engine provides coming out the slow turns. I wonder if, just maybe as Jenny suggested there, on a circuit like this, where they've gone towards this lower downforce setup, dumped a lot of their drag in a response to the top speed that Red Bull has, whether that's cost them.
Finally.
That's Pierre Gasly saying finally, and those were the cheers from the AlphaTauri garage, because he managed to get ahead of Daniel Ricciardo and is now up into 4th place. Yuki Tsunoda has made a great little move on Esteban Ocon and got up into 7th position. So both AlphaTauris making progress. And wow, really dramatic turn of events for Ferrari. From 2 o'clock here on 5 Live, it's Northern Ireland versus Cyprus, and we can get the team news on that Nations League tie with Ali Bruce Ball. Afternoon, Ali.
Good afternoon. Northern Ireland looking for a first Nations League win at the 14th time of asking now. 3 changes from the defeat in Kosovo on Thursday. 34-year-old Trevor Carson's in goal today. Bailey Peacock-Farrell has picked up an injury in training. Paddy McNair returns to the side. He's in for George Saville. 18-year-old Shay Charles starts in central midfield. Important game for Northern Ireland, this one, and a moving occasion at Windsor Park today ahead as well, as the nation pays tribute to one of its footballing greats in Billy Bingham, the former player and manager who died aged 90 on Thursday.
Thank you very much, Ali. As I say, full commentary coming up at 2 o'clock, 6:06 later on with Robbie Savage and Chris Sutton as well. So you can get your calls in for that once the match is completed. We're on lap 23 of 51, so almost at half race distance in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix with myself, Jack Nicholls, the former McLaren mechanic, Mark Priestley and Jenny Gow. And so the order is thus: after Charles Leclerc dramatically retired from the lead of the Grand Prix, Verstappen is leading, 6 seconds ahead of Sergio Perez in 2nd place. Then it's George Russell in 3rd for Mercedes. Pierre Gasly is 20 seconds back in 4th place in the AlphaTauri. Daniel Ricciardo is 5th, but is yet to pit. Hamilton is closing in on him, and he's in 6th place. So Hamilton has closed in quite quickly on Pierre Gasly, so he's going to be trying to get ahead of the Frenchman before too long. 7th is Yuki Tsunoda in the other AlphaTauri. 8th is Esteban Ocon. 9th is Sebastian Vettel. And 10th, and having a great race, is Zhou Guanyu, the Chinese Alfa Romeo driver.
Joe, I'm afraid we have a technical issue. We have to box. I'm afraid.
Are you kidding me? Again? Guys, we cannot just always having problems when we have a chance.
And Joe was having a great drive until they came on the radio and told him he has to pit because they got a technical problem. He's he was at 10th place. He's only had 1 points finish so far in his career, which was the first race of this season in Bahrain, doing a really solid job, but technical problems for the Alfa Romeo team. And it is a Ferrari powertrain in the back of that Alfa Romeo. Sebastian Vettel, meanwhile, is now trying to attack Esteban Ocon in the fight over 8th position, coming down towards turn 1, but I think Vettel is a little bit too far back this time to make a pass on Ocon. Now, Ocon goes wide, though, coming into 1, so Vettel could have another opportunity coming into 3. That's where he made the move before on Ocon, but made a mistake and went straight on. Looped it back around, lost a load of places, but now he's back where he started in all of that, and this is going to be a really good opportunity for the Aston Martin man. Ocon covers the inside, Vettel goes to the outside, laid on the brakes, but he won't be able to get all the way around the outside. I think he turned in a bit early and maybe just nipped the rear of Ocon's car there, but they're still in those positions. Ocon 8th, Vettel in 9th.
He's looking racy, isn't he, Sebastian Vettel? It's good to see this from him. I haven't seen it for a while. So, yeah, Sebastian Vettel might be back. The old Sebastian Vettel that we love to watch racing. Good stuff from them. We'll keep an eye on that one. The big loser from this first round of pit stops, or certainly the first real round of pit stops outside of the virtual safety car, was Lando Norris. The field's so bunched up in the middle behind that top 4 who have a big gap in front. Lando Norris has dropped all the way down to 15th. He was sitting right behind his teammate Ricciardo, who's currently in 5th. And just the point of making a pit stop has catapulted him all the way down the order. He's got a huge amount of traffic in front. Ricciardo yet to pit, of course, so he's going to have a similar issue. But that's a real sign of just how tight it is in the midfield.
Yeah, I can't quite work out how it's gone so badly for Norris.
It's just bunched up. The field's so bunched that there's no gap for anybody to drop into. And when you run out of tyres, you run out of tyres.
Yeah, just looking at when he came in, I think he came in just after Leclerc had his engine problem, so maybe they were banking on there being a virtual safety car or a safety car. He needed to come in anyway around that time, but he came in hoping for a safety car and it just didn't happen, so he dropped right out into traffic, and as you say, currently 15th. And on Zhou, that's his 3rd retirement from 4 races now, and there's something definitely very wrong going on down there. It was a fragile car in testing. It remains a fragile car for Zhou.
Lap 25 of 51 in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Max Verstappen is leading, and if it finishes like this, then he will move 35 points clear of Charles Leclerc at the top of the championship. Sebastian Vettel is right behind Esteban Ocon again. He goes to the outside again, onto the brakes, coming into the left-hander of 3, and this time does make the move. Nice move round the outside from Sebastian Vettel, and he is up into 8th place. Ocon is down to 9th. Kevin Magnussen is now in 10th place. But this, forgive me if I bring back sort of bad memories here, but, and maybe this was slightly before your time, but what year was it where McLaren had sort of the fastest car, but it never, what was it, like 2003 or something?
It kept blowing up.
It kept blowing up.
2003 and 2005, really, we had a very good opportunity to win the championship with Kimi Raikkonen, and it was a series of engine failures in the most part. And it was a good old-fashioned engine failures in those days where, you know, you could see it from miles away. It was one of those. But they happened so frequently. But back then, of course, we were pushing engine development week in, week out, bringing a brand new spec of engine to every Grand Prix, really pushing the limits. And perhaps that was the cost, but there's a real shame. So you can do as much as you can from inside the garage, from inside the cockpit, but if the technology lets you down, there's not a lot you can do.
Verstappen leading, 6.7 seconds ahead of Perez in 2nd. Russell is 3rd, 12 seconds back. Gasly is 4th. Ricciardo is 5th. Still out on the hard tyres. Hamilton is now trying to close in on him, coming into the first corner, but he's just a little bit too far away through the 90-degree left at turn 1. Then he heads down into the next left-hander of turn 2, which takes him now down the tree-lined back streets of Baku. And he's very close to the back of Daniel Ricciardo here in the fight for 5th. He should be able to get him here coming into the left-hander. Ricciardo doesn't fight it too hard. Hamilton to the inside, and he's up into 5th place. His next target is Pierre Gasly. I feel like I've been saying that a lot today, but he's never actually got to the back of him. But he is 3 seconds back from Pierre Gasly, who is 4th, and George Russell, who is in 3rd place, is 20 seconds ahead of Gasly, Jenny.
Yeah, it's a bit of a lonely race, actually, for George Russell, and I'm sure he is delighted with that. He went onto the hard tyres when all the others did around lap 10, which means if he's not being challenged from behind or from in front of himself at the moment and really trying to track down Perez in 3rd, he can just coast round and save as much tyres as he possibly can and potentially get himself on the podium. He's already had 2 third-place finishes so far this year, Australia and Spain. Can he do it again?
I think he's looking dead cert at the moment. But after the commentator's curse I put on Joe a moment ago, I regret saying that. But yeah, Russell is in a very strong position. He's also lapping half a second quicker than Gasly, so he might even be able to have enough of an advantage to pit again. So not even worry too much about saving the tyres and pit again for a new set and not lose any places. So Russell in a strong position in 3rd. Gasly is 4th. Hamilton is now into 5th place. Ricciardo is in 6th. Tsunoda is in 7th. Vettel is in 8th. Esteban Ocon is in 9th, and he is just ahead of his teammate Fernando Alonso. So the 2 Alpines are fighting over 9th and 10th places, and Kevin Magnussen is not too far behind them either in the Haas. The rest of the runners are Bottas in 12th, Stroll 13th, Albon 14th, Norris 15th, Schumacher and Latifi. The top 17 out, Joe, Leclerc and Sainz. Ocon moves out of the way effectively, and Fernando Alonso comes through down into the first corner. Alonso gets ahead of his teammate and up into 9th place.
And now that Lewis Hamilton has freed himself up by overtaking Daniel Ricciardo, he's actually got some pace. So Gasly is his next target, as Jack has said. This could end up being a really strong result for Mercedes, given where they qualified, which was difficult, particularly on Hamilton's side of the garage. They haven't looked the strongest that they've looked all season at this particular racetrack, but they could still yet rescue a best of the rest result, couldn't they?
Yeah. I think Gasly will be a bit of a tough one. Norris is making his way past Alex Albon and getting up into 14th place. But Gasly's been quick all weekend, and he did out-qualify Hamilton legitimately. He wasn't too far behind Russell, I don't think, in qualifying.
No. Good straight line speed as well, which of course we keep saying is crucial along here.
It was just a 1/10 of a second that Gasly was behind Russell, so I think it'll be tough for Hamilton to get Gasly, but no doubt he'll try. Sound you can hear is Kevin Magnussen coming up now in the Haas car over the crest of the hill and then over down the other side into turn 15 as he tries to get ahead of Esteban Ocon for 10th place and the final points paying position as they come underneath a load of fans hanging out on the balconies. There's quite a lot of balconies actually over this track in Baku, so a lot of good viewing points.
I think McLaren are going to be one of the most upset from this sort of, what do we call it, lead of the midfield pack, because we've got Ricciardo in 6th, but he's still got a pit, so he's going to drop right out of that fight. That's going to leave the AlphaTauris in a really strong position, with Gasly currently in 4th, Tsunoda in 7th. Tsunoda will move up to 6th when Ricciardo disappears. So both Mercedes and AlphaTauri really maximising results after potentially mixed bag of qualifying.
Just looking at a battle for 4th, Gasly and Hamilton. Was it Imola that Hamilton was stuck behind Gasly for most of the race, just couldn't get past him? It absolutely drove him crazy, so that's one to watch. And also, which would you rather have? We remember this at the beginning of the year, we said, would you rather have a reliable car that went slowly or an unreliable car that was fast? And I think that question is kind of probably apt right now, isn't it, with Charles Leclerc having to retire in the Ferrari from P1?
Yeah, but we were asking it about Red Bull back then, probably.
I know.
Yeah, true.
Lando Norris gets ahead of Lance Stroll and up into 13th place. So that is what? That's only the second Ferrari reliability thing, isn't it? So Spain and Baku here were reliability issues from the lead. Verstappen had Bahrain and Melbourne, where he retired from strong positions with mechanical retirement. So it's kind of 2 for 2 now between the pair of them. Let's bring in the BBC's chief Formula 1 writer, Andrew Benson. Good afternoon, Andrew. What would you like to say to me?
Hi, Jack. Well, the producer asked me to come on, so I thought I better have. I mean, I think looking at Ferrari sort of taking a step back here, if people remember what happened, Leclerc had his engine failure in Spain, and they traced that, they didn't say immediately what went wrong, but they traced that back at the factory to an MGUH and turbo failure, which they said was not a design fault or a reliability issue. They haven't explained what that actually meant yet. But what that's effectively meant, because Leclerc's not taken another new engine element since then, they've effectively had to combine the parts from 2 different engines. The first engine that he started the season with, and the second engine that he took in Miami. Which is quite early for a new engine, by the way, anyway. So here's some radio.
Hamilton saying his back is killing him. We'll talk about that in a bit, because that's to do with the bouncing. In fact, Kevin Magnussen is just about to attack Esteban Ocon for 10th place, but we know how slippery that Alpine is in a straight line, so we can't quite make it through. So yes, early engine troubles in this season already for Ferrari, Andrew.
Right, so they've presumably taken the turbo and MGUH off the first engine and put it onto the second engine rather than fitting a new engine, because he's already at 2 engines, so he's looking at an engine penalty down the line anyway. So this is not just a huge blow in terms of just basic championship points, but it raises questions about that strategy with the engine. Were they right to do a kind of cut and shot, if you like, which is slightly painting a vulgar picture, because these are highly sophisticated technical components, obviously, and they should be interchangeable. But was that a right decision, or should they just have taken that new engine for this race, where straight line speed performance is so important? And also, what does it mean going forward if they've had 2 engine failures in 3 races? That's really quite alarming, as on top of an early engine change in the first place, even if that was for performance reasons.
And Andrew, do you recall a time or a season in the annals of Formula 1 where the driver who takes all the pole positions is 35 points off the lead of the championship after 8 races and can't convert any of them into wins?
Well, not the exact mathematical picture in terms of 35 points.
No, but this kind of vibe.
Yeah. It's beginning to be reminiscent for me of Renault's season in 1982. Slightly confused because eventually the Ferrari became the fastest car that year. But in 1982, Alain Prost and René Arnoux took a string of pole positions, led loads of races, and they just kept breaking down. And they never quite featured in the championship fight, even though it was kind of like a championship everyone was trying to lose, if you like, the way that season unfolded, because the car just kept failing. As it happened back then, it turned out that there was a Hissamo radio.
Max, last lap was a 47.5.
That's 1, 2, 5. That's close to 48.0, right?
You know full well what it's like to lose a race around here. Keep your head down, target 48.0.
Okay, so that's Verstappen getting told off for going too quickly, basically. The team saying that was a 47.5, and he's saying, yeah, whatever. And we're 1-2. And the team saying, yeah, but do 48 zeros, please. Did Prost crash out of the lead of Monaco in 82 as well, Andrew?
Both of them crashed out of the race of Monaco in 1982. Yeah, that was one of the times where the drivers were at fault. But usually that year, it was a technical failure that stumped Renault. And actually, Alain Prost said years later that it was a stupid political reason. The parts were supplied by an official Renault supplier, and they were really cheap, and they could have got a better replacement part, and it just never did it because it wasn't the right thing to do, corporately speaking. I don't know whether Prost was telling the truth on that one, but he did say that. Anyway, I'm not saying Ferrari doing that now, but it's beginning to feel like that, isn't it? How can you get 6 poles in 8 races, and the season's just fallen apart for him, hasn't it? It's really, from Leclerc's point of view, it's really tragic, and also from the point of view of an objective observer, because now Verstappen's in total control.
Yeah, absolutely. A mixture of reliability for Ferrari, strategy calls in Monaco, mistakes from Leclerc as well, crashing out or spinning out in Imola. Lunch at the cricket. Ellie Holdroyd.
Yes, it's been a fruitful morning session for England. They are going into lunch at 195 for 2. So 105 runs and just the 1 wicket in the session. Alex Lee's out for 67, but Joe Root's on 35. Ollie Pope is on 84. Root, difficult drop just before lunch, but he will be happy about that. And Ollie Pope walks into the pavilion to the applause of the fans here at Trent Bridge. England 195 for 2, still 358 runs behind New Zealand.
Thank you very much, Ellie, and of course we'll be keeping you up to date with the cricket for the rest of the day. Someone who on hashtag BBC F1, Brendan, points out 2002 when Pablo Montoya took 5 pole positions in a row from Monaco all the way to the French Grand Prix and won none of them that season. In fact, he didn't win a race all season, Montoya, and had 7 pole positions that year. So similar vibes there. And that was a year that Schumacher absolutely dominated the championship, but Montoya took 7 poles in 17 races.
I think it was interesting, the call we just heard to Verstappen to sort of moderate his lap time and effectively knock over a couple of seconds off his previous lap time, bringing it down to 1:48. Now, you might think, well, that goes against everything that Formula 1 stands for. These should be the fastest cars, the fastest drivers, pushing to the limit all the way through. But, of course, they've got no challenge now. Ferrari have disappeared from this race. They just now need to see these cars through to the checkered flag. And this is, don't forget, the fastest that any Formula 1 car goes at any point throughout the season. Certainly the fastest that these cars have gone at any point in their 2022 life.
Okay, Kev, it's starting to get critical. They'll get past Ocon.
So that's Magnussen being told it's starting to get critical that we get past Esteban Ocon. Magnussen has pitted, Ocon has not pitted, so I'm not sure why it's so critical to be well, I guess because Norris is on his way.
Yeah, Norris is going quickly
in the McLaren in 12.
That's right. Norris is starting to close and seems to have a bit of run of pace, so that's the threat from behind. It's the Alpines that seem to be a bit of a cork in the bottle, no matter where they are on the circuit. They don't, as I said earlier, they don't generate the lap time necessarily, but they are very quick in a straight line, so very difficult to overtake, which is your perfect race setup. But if you're stuck behind one, that becomes increasingly frustrating. The point I was just making was the speeds that the cars get to along this circuit means that, given that we have fixed gear ratios now in Formula 1, it's not like the olden days you could just adjust your ratios to suit the circuit. They are fixed, so when you start reaching these maximum speeds that we see here, the engine starts to spin that little bit faster, it starts to get put under a little bit more pressure.
Oh, Magnussen slowing down. Kevin Magnussen on a good run, and the team saying it was critical he got past, but now the Haas has broken down. Ferrari engine in the back of that Haas, so don't know what the issue is, but Magnussen pulls off the circuit.
Yeah.
Okay, we need to slow. Okay, Kevin, stop the car, stop the car, stop the car.
Engine gone for Kevin Magnussen in the Haas. The Ferrari power unit letting him down. Of course, with the customer teams, it's very difficult to know exactly whether it is related or not related. This could be a full safety car potentially, because Magnussen's pulled off at a service at a sort of exit point on the track, but there doesn't seem to be much room where the exit point is, because there's a vehicle there.
Blocking it, yeah, which sort of seems to go against the point of an exit point. But yeah, we'll have to see. But yeah, worrying times for anybody with a Ferrari engine, because it was another big blow up, wasn't it? Smoke pouring out the back of that Ferrari power unit. So yeah, worrying times for anybody with one of those power units. Certainly worrying times for Ferrari, and it's a virtual safety car that we've got. So neutralising the field, everybody slows down to a set speed limit.
Verstappen pits. Max Verstappen comes into the pits from the lead of the Grand Prix under the virtual safety car to come off the hard tyres onto a brand new set of hard tyres, and that will see him to the end of the Grand Prix, no trouble at all. Sergio Perez pits as well, so Red Bull continuing their stranglehold, I suppose, on this race at the moment. They've got it comfortably in their pocket, to use another metaphor, and Perez pits onto a new set of hard tyres, and he heads out onto the circuit now. Virtual safety car deployed to clear Kevin Magnussen's car. So Verstappen leads, Perez second, George Russell is third in the Mercedes, and he's coming into the pits too. Pierre Gasly is fourth. We'll see what happens with your Gaslys and your Hamiltons and your Ricardos and your Tsunodas. That mid-pack is going to be quite interesting when it comes to the pit stops. Is anyone going to fancy coming in again? This is good news for Ricardo, actually. Yeah. If Ricardo can make it in, because he hasn't made a pit stop yet. So this could bring him out potentially in front of his teammate Lando Norris and on some fresher tyres. So we'll see. Ricardo he's still coming down the back straight. Virtual safety car deployed. Hamilton pits from 5th place, whereas Gasly does not.
Gasly
so that's interesting.
Could he? Gasly couldn't pit because he would have then given up track position to Hamilton, who was very close behind him. Hamilton has the gap behind because he knows Ricciardo's pitting. Ricciardo doing so right now. So that puts Hamilton onto the fresh tyres. He's got to now chase down Gasly again, but Gasly didn't have the same opportunity. So there's going to be a tyre battle, an offset in performance with the tyres come the end of this race. And Hamilton could yet start to chase down the 2 AlphaTauris as he comes out behind Tsunoda with Gasly in front of him. 2 AlphaTauris between Hamilton and Russell, and that elusive 4th place.
He was only 2 seconds back from Gasly when he pitted Lewis Hamilton. Ricciardo has pitted. We'll see where he emerges in a moment. Ocon's into the pits and Bottas is into the pits.
It's another slow stop for Red Bull, 4.4 seconds, which is so un-Red Bull-like, and it was the left rear this time, but the new wheel going on once again, just not going on cleanly.
Ricciardo had a huge lockup as he braked down to get to the speed limit in the pit lane, and Ricciardo has come out in front of Norris on a set of medium tyres. So interested to see what Ricciardo can do in the second half of this Grand Prix. Before that, the strategy wasn't really working out for him, but the virtual safety car has played into his hands. I guess it balances out because they all pitted in the first virtual safety car, and Ricciardo couldn't afford to, so now he's pitted in the second virtual safety car.
It's almost the way they've kind of planned the race. It's just that he's managed to benefit from the virtual safety car with Ricciardo saving a bit of time in his stop. I think the interesting one is going to be the Mercedes battle with AlphaTauri. Huge tyre offset between Hamilton and Tsunoda and Gasly in front. 24 laps on the tyres of both AlphaTauris, just 1 lap on a new set of hards for Lewis Hamilton. So can he chase down the 2 AlphaTauris and bring himself right up beneath the rear wing of his teammate George Russell, making what I guess would be classified as a really strong and almost the perfect result for Mercedes. If they can finish behind the top 2 Red Bulls, that would be a great outcome.
Bit of a weird thing here, that the exact problem we were talking about with Magnussen's car is that they've got that vehicle there, so they can't actually get the car off the track properly.
But the problem is the car's probably in a safe position, but that exit or entry point is now blocked if they need to get marshals and a recovery vehicle onto the circuit. So it's certainly not ideal, is it?
No, absolutely not. When Kevin Magnussen got out the car, it actually started rolling away, and he was to the marshals, hey guys, come over here, help me, the car's rolling away. So race over for Kevin Magnussen. We'll see whether, the virtual safety car is ending, so race control happy with all that. So the race goes live once again. Oh, big lockup you heard there from Yuki Tsunoda. That is not going to help his chances of keeping Hamilton behind. Race is underway again. Verstappen leading, Perez second, Russell third, Gasly is fourth, Tsunoda is fifth, Hamilton is sixth, Vettel is seventh, Alonso is eighth, ninth is Ricciardo, 10th is Norris.
Is that Tsunoda ahead of me?
A firm Lewis, yet to stop. And we are seeing degradation on that hard tyre. Expect at least 1 second advantage, if not more.
So that's Hamilton being told Tsunoda's yet to stop. I think he has stopped Tsunoda. They mean he hasn't done another stop, so he's on the old tyres and going to go to the end on those ones. So we'll see what Hamilton can do here, Jenny. And we heard his radio message earlier on, didn't we, saying his back is killing him.
Yeah, obviously the car has been bouncing around. It's been the story of his weekend so far. He had miserable practice sessions and said his back was pretty much destroyed. The car is still bouncing. They say it's not porpoising, it is just bouncing because of the effect of the track being bumpy, but it's bouncing more than anybody else's because of the ride height of that car, the setup that they've had to take to try and get him to go fast enough. So this is going to be uncomfortable for Hamilton now. 36 laps in of 51, and he's got to chase down Tsunoda and Gasly again.
Yeah, exactly. Bonington, Pete Bonington, his race engineer, seemed pretty optimistic that Hamilton would have a big advantage over Tsunoda, and he might even be able to get the move done here. A bit of a slide from Hamilton as he comes out of the final corner at turn 16, but this should be fairly straightforward in the fight for 5th place here. They're coming now down towards turn 1, but also the Mercedes is not particularly quick in the straight line. I wonder if Tsunoda's DRS is broken. There's a bit of metal just doinging around at the top. He's not going to get DRS anyway here. Hamilton is. Tsunoda covers the inside. Hamilton still finds the inside and is up into 5th position. Tsunoda down to 6th. Vettel is now charging in to the back of Tsunoda, but Vettel hasn't pitted either. So it's a solid run actually from Yuki Tsunoda in 6th position. His best result so far this season is a 7th place, which he picked up in Imola at AlphaTauri's home Grand Prix, basically only 20 minutes or so down the road to Faenza. And 6th is his best ever Formula 1 result, Tsunoda. No, I lied. 4th in the last race in Abu Dhabi was his best Formula 1 result, Tsunoda.
What we are getting is a little insight here into what might have happened with that strategy that Ferrari put Leclerc on. That early pit stop under the virtual safety car, going onto the hard tyres. Starting to look like now that may not have made it to the end of the race, or if it had, it would have been severe degradation. They're talking about 1 second in terms of tyre offset between a new set of hard tyres and the set that they'd done 24 laps on the AlphaTauri. So that was the same point that Leclerc stopped. So Verstappen's decision not to pit, or Red Bull's decision not to pit at that stage, maybe not looking quite so silly now.
So Perez actually sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. We've got 15 laps to go, so another about 25 minutes or so probably remaining in this Grand Prix, and then we will turn our focus here on 5 Live to Northern Ireland versus Cyprus in the Nations League. That's a 2 o'clock kickoff here from Windsor Park. But until then, it's the remaining 15 laps of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix that Max Verstappen is leading. Sergio Perez is second. Charles Leclerc, the man who started on pole position, retiring after his Ferrari engine blew up and costing him even more points in the championship fight. Just getting a replay of Yuki Tsunoda, and yeah, the DRS is broken. Well, half of it appears to be broken. So
its entire DRS flap is snapped in half, so only half of the flap is opening.
And then it bends weirdly when he brakes. Did you see that as well when it closed?
Yeah. Very strange. I've not seen that before. It's literally looked like the DRS flap, the upper wing, has broken in two. Very strange.
So, not ideal for Yuki Tsunoda. We'll see whether he can keep Sebastian Vettel behind him. Alonso, Ricciardo and Norris are the rest of the top 10. Ricciardo is motoring on towards the back of Alonso, not terribly quickly, about half a second a lap, so it's notable, but he is going quicker than Alonso, Vettel and Tsunoda, who are in 8th, 7th and 6th places respectively. So he is closing in, Ricciardo, with some good pace. So is Lando Norris. In fact, Norris is going quicker than Ricciardo. So late moves in the Grand Prix, potentially coming from the McLarens. 9th for Ricciardo, 10th for Norris. Verstappen's lead is 14 seconds over Sergio Perez, and Verstappen has sort of bossed this one, hasn't he? Obviously Leclerc was in the lead and who knows what happened, but the sort of Verstappen-Perez question that came into light after Perez won the last Grand Prix in Monaco and out-qualified Verstappen yesterday in qualifying. Verstappen has comfortably had the race pace over Perez.
Yeah, he has, and that's often the measure of this man, isn't it? He's when it really matters, he tends to deliver, and his race results often reflect that. I just want to go back to what Jenny was saying about Lewis Hamilton and his back and the bouncing and really feeling that from inside the cockpit. There are a couple of things. First of all, this is a very bumpy circuit. It's a street circuit, so it is very bumpy. The cars do bounce their way along, but also the 2022 cars a lot stiffer than the cars from 2021 and in the prior era of the sport. We've got these very sort of much lower profile tyres which don't have anywhere near the squash that the old ones used to have, and so the car has to run a lot more stiffly in terms of its suspension to keep this ride height stable, because there's so much underfloor downforce being produced where they need a stable aero platform. So you have to run the cars very stiff, and on a street circuit like this, of course, these bumps are then felt, and if you combine that with the aerodynamic porpoising that many of the cars are feeling as well, it's a really, really uncomfortable ride, both for the driver, but I also wonder, that DRS flap that we saw broken on Tsunoda's car, I wonder if also there's an element of the cars shaking themselves to bits around here.
Well, Tsunoda has been given a black and orange flag actually now, which I don't remember the last time I saw a black and orange flag in a Formula One race. It's been a long old time.
Been a while.
It's a very sort of old school flag. It's black with an orange disc in the middle, and it means that you've got something wrong with your car, you've got to come into the pits, and it's used mainly in kind of club racing basically, and kind of national level competition where there's no pits to car radio and it's just a driver driving around by himself, and it's a way of letting the driver know there's something wrong with your car.
Well,
like when you're flashing someone on the motorway because someone's door's open or something, or
you had to rummage around at the bottom
or
of the
petrol
box to
cap's
find
open.
that one, won't they?
Yeah.
Haven't used that for a while, you're right.
Well, your fog lights are on. There's no fog.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting one. So that may mean Tsunoda has to come into the pits, and he does.
He does.
So that's a real shame for Yuki Tsunoda.
The only thing I think they can do is tape it up. They can't change that rear wing, certainly not in the time frame that we're putting back in this race. So the only thing I can think is they disable DRS, tape up the flap, and get him back out there, or retire the car.
Yeah, what are they going to do here? They go to the back of the car.
Absolutely.
Oh, no, they just changed. Are they just changing tyres?
No, they are taping it up. There you go. So a bit of swearing from Tsunoda on the radio.
Yeah, but they are literally, they've got the gaffer tape, but the problem is they've all got their helmets on, so no one can bite it. No one can bite it to rip it off. So they put a bit of tape on the back, and Tsunoda heads out onto the circuit again. It's a bit of a...
What is this?
It's reliability. No DRS from now onwards. No DRS.
So Tsunoda, no DRS for him. He comes out just in front of Lance Stroll, who is pootling around in 14th place. So I think that's Tsunoda's hunt for points over, unfortunately for him.
Real shame, isn't it? They were on for a strong result. As a team, they were on for a strong result. Still got Gasly up in 4th place, and Tsunoda was also looking strong. So heartbreak, really, for those guys.
It's a bit of a... I don't know. Yeah, I'm surprised that call came from race control, to be honest. That feels like it's a AlphaTauri decision whether you should pit him or not, or whether it's a problem or not, or... Because it wasn't working, but admittedly, but...
The only question is if a bit can fly off, of course. If the other half of that broken rear wing was in danger of detaching itself from the car, which didn't look like it, but that, I guess, can be their only concern. You know what, bits flying off the car and onto the racetrack, which would have brought the race to a halt. So.
No, of course, but AlphaTauri don't want that either. I don't know, interesting one. Lap 40 of 51, Jenny Gao.
Yeah, just looking at Lewis Hamilton, he's now just over 5 seconds behind Pierre Gasly in what's going to be a battle for 4th place. Remember, Gasly on older tyres, he didn't come in and stop when Hamilton did, but Russell up the road is just having a no-man's land race to 3rd at this current moment in time. Hamilton is having to fight hard for this. The difference in their races this year has been so stark a contrast. Russell seems to get away with it, and Hamilton has all the negative luck.
And let's target 47.5 for now, Max. And that's +1.
Yeah. You sure? I don't want the tires to get too cold.
Okay, stay as you are. 47.0.
I mean, I don't mind. Just tell me what you think is best.
Oh, you're right. Left-hand side tyres.
I
all felt a bit, these aren't the droids you're looking for, didn't it?
It's a little negotiation over lap time. I love it. I mean, what Max is talking about, of course, if he does back off too much, you need to be pushing to some extent to maintain the tyre temperature. And what happens, of course, if your tyre temperature drops below the optimum window, you start to slide a little bit, you don't have the same grip, and then you can introduce this graining phenomenon where the top surface is a very different temperature to the core temperature of the tyre, and it just rolls away beads of rubber. And what happens then is you slide more and you exacerbate the problem, and you can be into a world of pain. So you need to maintain tyre temperature, and the best way to do that is to just keep at least some element of pushing as he circulates this racetrack.
That's 41 of 51, 11 laps to go.
We do not want to use DRS at all now to the end of the race. No DRS.
Okay, so that's a bit of concern for Red Bull with their DRS, because they did have trouble with it, Friday, didn't they, with Max Verstappen, and maybe because the FIA sort of forced Tsunoda to pit, they think, well, if something goes wrong with them, then they'll be forced to pit and come in for repairs, and so they can't, it's almost taken out of their hands, so they're just being safe. And
they don't need it, do they? They don't need DRS at this stage. They really have no threat. They really are a comfortable race right now, Red Bull. Unusually comfortable, with no real threat behind. They've got a big 15-second gap between Verstappen out front, Perez in second, and then there's a further 5 seconds back to George Russell. So no real threat. They just need to get their cars home.
Daniel needs to push up more. If I get stuck behind Daniel Ocon,
I'm on it.
So this is the Norris-Ricciardo McLaren squabble, with Ricciardo ahead of Norris, and now it's roles reversed where Norris is saying we need to get ahead of Ricciardo. So there we go. Lap 42 of 51, 10 to go. Jenny Gow.
Yeah, just looking at Sergio Perez, he's been on the radio to his team to ask if he could go for another hot lap. Now, he's already got the fastest lap under his belt, so the extra point is there for him. But you guys saying Verstappen has the race pace, Perez isn't able to fight him because he's not able to fight because of Red Bull. Doesn't matter how fast he thinks he can go, there's no point. He knows he's got to finish this in second. What he could do in that car, who knows? It's just, he's not allowed to.
But I don't think in the early stages he was... I don't think anyone forced him to be half a second a lap slower than Verstappen when they both got in clear air. I don't know. And I feel like no one's forcing him to be 15 seconds back from Verstappen after Verstappen overtook him on track. I think that's the difference, I think.
I think you often see drivers, even if they are the second driver in inverted commas, if they've been asked to let their lead driver through, quite often what you'll see is just out of pride, you'll see them chasing the first driver down, won't you? Staying under the rear wheel just to let everyone else know.
Making the point.
Exactly right, and he hasn't done that. But look, I think Perez knows where he sits. He's had a solid weekend, and look, this is the perfect result for Red Bull.
Yeah.
They have not only got both of their cars up front on merit, genuinely on merit, but also they've now lost any threat they did have from Ferrari, both cars dropping out of the race. I think they've played this well. I think that if the race had played out without losing Leclerc, I think Leclerc would have potentially suffered on those tyres. Yes, we had another virtual safety car, which would have given him an opportunity to make a second pit stop with a little bit less of a penalty. But I think it was Red Bull that made the right call early on in this race when that lap 10 virtual safety car came in, which must have been right at the very start of any pit window for making a one-stopper work.
Quite a few people surprised about the duct tape, taping up the rear wing of Yuki Tsunoda's car on the fastest, one of the fastest circuits on the F1 calendar, and his car's held together with duct tape. Is that
It's amazing
unusual,
stuff,
or is it really strong?
Well, what else do you do?
Is it special?
It's
duct tape.
No, I mean it's high quality stuff, yeah, and there are different grades of
okay, right.
duct tape.
They haven't picked it up from the post office.
No, it's good stuff. But what else do you do? I mean, it's it does seem weird given that this is the pinnacle of motorsport and the money involved. But in that situation that we just saw, when you've got seconds, you're in the pit lane, the only thing you can do is wrap it up in tape. Excellent at wrapping Christmas presents, F1 mechanics.
Yeah, I bet.
Flash.
No one can open them, though, because they're using industrial strength duct tape. Right, Hamilton has caught the back of Gasly again, and this is a real opportunity for Hamilton to get into fourth place. Coming down the back straight, Hamilton looks to the inside, looks to the outside. Gasly holds the line in the middle, and Hamilton can't get through at the moment. Gasly holds fourth, Hamilton in fifth, Vettel having a good race in sixth, Alonso seventh, Ricciardo eighth, Norris ninth, Ocon is in 10th, and then outside of the points positions is Bottas and Albon.
Okay, Pierre, and make sure we keep it on track with Hamilton. We need to secure those points. It's still a very good position for us.
So that's Gasly being told, don't be too silly. 5th place, we're happy with that. If you can keep Hamilton behind and have 4th, like, tremendous.
It's only a matter of time, this. The tyre offset is so great. Around 24 laps difference in terms of Gasly's done a 24 extra laps than Hamilton on the set of hard tyres. The tyre offset is huge, so it feels to me like this is only a matter of time before Hamilton's sails past, and the message there is don't fight him to the point where we end up losing out for the valuable points for the team that we've currently got.
Best result so far this season for AlphaTauri was 8th for Pierre Gasly in Saudi Arabia, then had a 9th in Australia. They haven't scored any points since then, despite being pretty decent in qualifying on a lot of occasions. They haven't managed to pick up the points in the race, but they will do here, they will hope, with Pierre Gasly. They've already had Yuki Tsunoda drop out of the points in what would have been a very strong double points finish for the team. Here comes Hamilton again on the back of Tsunoda, on the back of Gasly for 4th place, down towards turn 1. Gasly covers the inside. Hamilton has got a lot of speed, but he doesn't quite get there into the first corner. Gasly has a slide, and now coming into turn 2, Hamilton's close again, but he will just sit behind Gasly, get the power down out of that second corner, and now as they come under the trees in between the houses on the back straight, he's going to have a real opportunity at getting into 4th place. Hamilton goes to the inside, later on the brakes, gets the job done. Hamilton up into 4th position, Russell 3rd, Hamilton 4th. Some big points incoming here for Mercedes, especially compared to Ferrari, who are going to pick up 0 points. Verstappen leads, Perez 2nd, Russell 3rd, Hamilton now into 4th place, Pierre Gasly down to 5th. Vettel, Alonso, Ricciardo, Norris and Ocon are the rest of the top 10.
Yeah, for all the talk we've had so far this season of Mercedes struggling, and let's make no mistake, they have been struggling, they've also managed to pick up some considerable points when they haven't had the perfect weekend, and that's really the measure of a really strong team. You maximise whatever you can do on that weekend, even if it's not the perfect outcome. That's what Mercedes are doing, and at the moment, that's what they're doing today, with Russell in 3rd, Hamilton 4th.
Well, the Ferrari mechanics are taking apart the pit wall already, because everybody's off the pit wall and everybody's packing up after Carlos Sainz retired from the Grand Prix, and then Charles Leclerc blew up a little later, and as a result Leclerc is out of the Grand Prix, and this is what he had to say with speaking to Lawrence Barretto.
Hey Charles, even after that tough start and that moment later on, you took a positive and you were leading the race. It must be frustrating then to have lost out again.
More than frustrating. Obviously, the first stint in the beginning we weren't particularly strong, but towards the end of the stint of the medium, I was catching back Checo, and then obviously there was the VSC. We decided to take that opportunity to pit, and I think it was the right choice. We were in the lead of the race. I was managing the tyres well. We just had to manage the tyres and the race till the end, which I think was, we were definitely in the best position possible to do that. And another DNF, it hurts. Yeah.
It's significant for the championship, obviously, and 4 poles you've not been able to convert. It just seems like it's spiralling a little bit, doesn't it?
It's more than significant. Yeah. I don't really have the words, to be honest. I came straight from the car to here, and it's just a huge disappointment, and I just hope we can jump back from it and yeah, to be on top of those things.
How about
non-stop disappointment recently for Charles Leclerc, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's heartbreaking stuff. I mean, the early signs this season were so strong for him.
Alonso has said this is all the pace he's got. Daniel's trying his best.
Yeah, our maximum pace, thanks.
So that's Norris. They've come to an agreement at McLaren where Norris, if he can catch up to Ricciardo, they'll let him through to try and attack Alonso. But if Norris can't get ahead of Alonso, then they'll let Ricciardo back through for 8th place. So that's the deal they've come to there. As ever, our listeners getting really involved with the niche stuff. Sir Lee Ha says they've used high-quality, heat-resistant, extra-strength duct tape on the International Space Station.
This is his max pace, so we really want to get stuck into him, Daniel. We want to get stuck into him.
Ricciardo being told, go and get Alonso for 7th place, and they've been using tape on jets since the 60s, apparently, and it's called speed tape.
There you go.
Tony asks, is there a difference between duct tape and gaffer tape?
Just another word for the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope one of them isn't a brand.
No, I don't think so, no.
Otherwise, other forms of sticky adhesive tape are available.
It's amazing stuff. The trouble that it can get you out of is quite incredible in all situations, clearly.
Yeah. Lap 46 of 51. Max Verstappen is leading the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in the closing stages here on 5 Live. The football coming up in half an hour. Ali Bruce Ball at Northern Ireland versus Cyprus in the Nations League. The cricket will be getting underway after lunch as well. We'll keep you up to date with that. 5 laps to go, though, on the streets of the capital of Azerbaijan. And the fight is for 7th place, really. Fernando Alonso ahead of Daniel Ricciardo because Verstappen is 18 seconds ahead of his teammate Sergio Perez. Fastest lap point currently is going to Perez, so that's a bit of an interesting one. And Perez doesn't quite have the gap to do a pit stop and come out in front of Russell. Verstappen doesn't have a gap to do a pit stop and come out in front of Perez in order to put on a new set of tyres and go for the fastest lap point. So I think Perez might have that.
Yeah, I think so. There's no gaps anywhere, really. It's certainly not inside the top 10 for anybody to have a go at taking that away. So the point's certainly going to the Red Bull team. But, yeah, I think you're right. I think Perez might well take that small consolation, I guess, for not maintaining the lead of the race when he was asked to move over earlier on.
And that would mean that the gap at the top of the championship for Verstappen, he'd get an extra 25 points. So the gap would be 34 points at the top of the championship. His advantage over Charles Leclerc. But the thing is, the championship is in no way over.
No.
Everybody's being a bit, well, not everybody, but it feels a bit doom and gloom currently because of the way that Ferrari have fallen apart over the last few races.
It's got cold.
Okay, copy.
Hamilton's saying the seat has gone cold. What does that mean?
That's a new one on me. I mean, the only thing I can think is that the seat...
They don't have heated seats, right?
No, so the seats are chilled at the start of the race, packed with dry ice, but of course that's nowhere that lasts this far into the Grand Prix. They do get warm, though, from underneath, particularly with the bottoming of the car. The seat of the car, the seat the driver's sitting in, is sitting right on the base of the chassis, and that in turn is grinding along the tarmac, so they do get very hot. So, yeah, I wonder if... well, I mean, I don't know. I've never heard that one. I don't know why. Maybe they are not bottoming to the same extent because tyre pressures have increased as the stint has gone on, and I'm not sure.
But surely he would then say, "I'm bottoming out less," rather than
think so.
rather than this like cryptic message.
Yeah, Lance, we see some very high oscillations, which we're not fully understanding. So we're going to box.
Lance Stroll into the pits, out of the Grand Prix in the Aston Martin because of very high oscillations.
Yeah, I mean, this is a circuit, as we said earlier, particularly with the 2022 cars, that just really makes any sort of bouncing, vibration problems or oscillations, as they call them, just even worse than they might be at another circuit, particularly with the really long straight. So you're experiencing that bottoming and bouncing for a long period of time. It can have a serious impact on the components on the car as well as on the driver. I think we're going to hear more about this, particularly the porpoising and the effect on drivers' health and well-being. I think that's a conversation that will be increased off the back of this particular weekend. A few drivers notably bringing that up in terms of bigger discussion in the media, so I don't think we heard of the end of that one. And of course, it's not quite an easy fix. There are certain technological developments we could use to alleviate it.
I appreciate it's difficult to keep close, it could be difficult to pass, but we should just try and keep him under pressure for the last 5 laps, keep Alonso under pressure for the last 5 laps so he can't make any mistakes. If he makes a mistake, we're on him.
Well, so Ricciardo's radio there. He's not able to make much of an impression on Fernando Alonso in 7th place. 3 laps to go now. And Max Verstappen is leading. Perez is 2nd, Russell is 3rd, Hamilton is 4th. Both Ferraris retiring from the Grand Prix. Jenny Gow.
Yeah, quite a high rate of attrition actually in this Grand Prix, bearing in mind it's 51 laps. We've got Stroll who's just retired, Magnussen, Zhou, Leclerc and Sainz all out. One of the highest retirement rates so far this season.
Yes, it's true actually. And all of them reliability. Nobody's put it in the Bazzers yet, have they, this weekend?
No.
Well, certainly in this Grand Prix. Verstappen's lead over Perez still now 19 seconds, so he's still just taking a couple of tenths out of his teammate every lap, Max Verstappen. And Daniel Ricciardo He's not close enough to Alonso. Norris isn't close enough to him for that move to be made either. A good result incoming for Sebastian Vettel too, I have to say. Yeah. 6th place currently. His best result so far this season, Vettel, is an 8th place finish that he picked up in Imola. And in fact, is this going to be his best result for Aston Martin, that he joined at the start of last season? No, of course not, because he finished 2nd here in Baku.
Oh yes,
last season. So absolutely in no way will this be his best result, but it will still be a solid performance.
He likes, doesn't it? He's definitely comfortable around here, isn't he? He's happy at this place and gets the best out of him. So it's nice to see him anyway, racing and getting shoulders out, elbows out, racing wheel to wheel again. I haven't seen it for a while.
One driver who will be getting their best result of the season, or matching their best result of the season, is Lewis Hamilton in 4th place.
Yeah.
On the braking, I think turn 5, I felt something fall between my feet, the tiny piece. I mean, everything feels normal.
Yeah, copy that, Max.
So I think you're right about these cars just sort of shaking apart. So something now has fallen between Verstappen's feet in the cockpit when he was on the brakes. He said the car feels normal, but
we had a situation in Brazil years ago where I was on DC's car, actually, David Coulthard's car, where a sort of big special nut, this kind of really McLaren design nut holding in one of the suspension rockers, just vibrated itself loose inside the cockpit, and it's quite a big, it's sort of twice the size of a 50p piece, and it fell off. And at a restart, David Coulthard is talking to us on the radio saying this piece has fallen off between my feet, a little bit like Verstappen did. And he sort of managed to kick it to himself and grabbed it. And as he came past the pit wall, threw it out of the car for us to try and see what it was. No one, of course, caught it. We couldn't see it at that speed. But it managed to hang on and stay together.
Wow, remarkable. Hamilton was 3rd in Bahrain in the opening race of the season. My apologies. So this will be his 2nd best result of the season after a 4th place in Australia. Here's Norris's radio.
We think Alonso's too fast. We're going to hold position.
Why hold position?
We held position, stint 1. We're returning the favour.
Yeah, but that was for the strategy. This is for a finishing position.
It's a bit of beef at McLaren, and it was kind of made a bit of a thing in the Netflix series Drive to Survive, and everybody said it was all a bit fake, the rivalry that they kind of tried to create on the show. But I don't know if it is actually. I think there is some needle between Ricciardo and Norris, and you can kind of hear it there. So it's a very interesting fight between the McLarens. They're going to have one lap to do a bit of fighting, I think, here, because Norris is closing right in on the back of Ricciardo. Verstappen has started his final lap of the Grand Prix. Thank you to Bob, who points out there is a difference between gaffer and duct tape. Okay. And it's the adhesive residue left behind when the tape is removed. Gaffer tape is designed to be removed residue-free to whatever it was adhered to. Duct tape will leave a sticky residue when it's removed. Bob. Well done, Bob. Well done, Bob. Final lap of the Grand Prix for Max Verstappen. He's coming through the middle sector, but we'll keep an eye on this McLaren fight because Norris is right on the back of Daniel Ricciardo here. They're about to come into basically the final overtaking opportunity. Ran a little bit wide coming through turn 15, did Norris. Out onto the back straight now. He's going to be in DRS range. It's the fight over 8th position, and it's the fight for internal McLaren superiority anyway at the end of this Grand Prix.
He's been told to hold position. Is he going to listen?
I know. They said hold position, but he's very, very close to the back of Ricciardo. He's going to get the DRS coming down the start-finish straight in towards turn 1. Norris is closing and closing and closing, and he does hold position. I think he maybe could have gone for it, but he decides to hold position. But Max Verstappen, meanwhile, is coming across the line. The checkered flag is waiting. And in a season where things just keep falling apart for Ferrari, Max Verstappen wins again. Victory in Azerbaijan, a Red Bull 1-2. Ferrari scored no points, and Verstappen's lead at the top of the championship goes up to 34 points. Sergio Perez is going to come across the line in second. What was the gap that Leclerc had? Was it 36 before after Australia? It was something
40,
like that.
He got up to 44, didn't he, at some point, yeah.
But now Verstappen's lead is 36 points. 34 points at the top of the championship with another win in Baku. Perez second. It's actually his first win in Baku for Verstappen. That is his 5th win in 8 races. And it is a dominant one. But Leclerc was there before, but the Ferrari engine blowing up and letting him down. Russell finishes 3rd, another podium finish for him. That's his 3rd podium finish of the season. Continues to be the only driver to have finished in the top 5 at every Grand Prix. The 2 McLarens are right together coming out across the line, but I don't think Norris won't be able to make the move because the finish line will come too soon. Hamilton finishes in 4th. Pierre Gasly 5th for his best result of the season for AlphaTauri. Sebastian Vettel 6th for his best result of the season for the Aston Martin team. 7th is Fernando Alonso, matching his best result of the season, which he had in Monaco last time out. And Norris is pretty close as they come across the line. There's barely anything between them, just 0.3 of a second. But it's Max Verstappen who takes the win. Big lead now at the top of the championship. I was about to ask this earlier, but I think there was some team radio or something. And it's a long season still. But
it is.
Ferrari can get this back.
Well, look, we've seen a 55-point swing in recent races. There's nothing to say that can't happen again. And we've seen reliability issues for Verstappen. We'll now see them from Leclerc. It can still go either way.
Really well driven, Max. Race win today. Nice job.
Was that a good race, or was that a good race? You tell me.
That was a very mature drive today, Max. Great pace when you needed it, and yeah, well done. Brilliant result.
Yeah, amazing result for the team as well. Great job. Really happy with that.
Maximum points there, Max, as well. 1st, 2nd. Very good.
Obviously, I'm saying that it's 34 points, Verstappen's championship lead. It's actually 21 points, because Sergio Perez has moved up into 2nd in the standings now.
P2. Solid drive. Recharge on.
Yeah. Good job, guys.
Well done, Checo, and a nice point for fastest lap as well. Well done, mate.
So Verstappen's lead is 21 points to Perez.
That's a good point.
I still think ultimately 34 points is the interesting gap, because that is the one that's going to decide the championship. So I'm standing by it, but
it's true, because we saw another sign today that Red Bull very clearly have their favoured man. We saw them ask Sergio Perez not to fight Verstappen. Perez leading the race,
and they have their quicker man as well, which we saw today as well.
That's true.
Consistency. Nicely done, team. Well done. I think the podium was a bit out of the stretch today, but you got to be there at the end. Let's keep pushing.
Russell satisfied with that podium finish, knows it only came because of the 2 Ferrari retirements, but Max Verstappen climbs out of the car, and yeah, it's still him versus Leclerc. Water dropping down from underneath the halo.
Coming out of his drinks bottle, I think.
Okay.
His drinks tube.
Yeah, but he jumps into the mechanics now. Big hug with Dr. Helmut Marko and Christian Horner, the Red Bull Motorsport advisor and the team principal, now into his mechanics and engineers. And another strong drive for Verstappen, another win for Verstappen, and an extension of the lead at the top of the championship. And what swings we've seen in the first 8 races.
Well, that's right. I mean, last year in the championship, we never saw the gap get anywhere near as big as we saw it earlier on in the season between Leclerc and Verstappen, and now we've seen that completely switch around. So, look, anything can happen. These are new cars. It's a new era of Formula One. Everyone's still learning, still understanding, still finding opportunities and ways to maximise the packages that they've all developed over the winter. So, it's prime opportunity. In the early phase of a new development development cycle, there are massive opportunities for those who get it right.
You are, it's Montreal next weekend as everybody goes to Canada for the next race. Not much time to get things sorted if you've had a bad race, like Ferrari with a double DNF.
Well, that's something actually I meant to ask Andrew Benson earlier. Would this failure mean that they'll need another new engine? Because we were already talking about they were going to have to take a new engine, and so this means there'll be that and still then another one. So we're looking at 2 weekends where Leclerc will have to take a grid drop, basically.
Yeah, and also, of course, introducing one next weekend or next time out will mean that they haven't had much of a chance to actually fix the problem. You can make upgrades or you can make changes based on reliability. They haven't got much time to come up with that solution, so they really are up against it.
Yeah, so tough times for Ferrari. very strong times at the moment for Red Bull, who've had their own reliability problems so far this season, as we alluded to a little bit earlier on, but none have come to haunt them recently. And we're going to hear from the top three in a moment, and then we'll be heading to Windsor Park for commentary of Northern Ireland versus Cyprus with Ali Bruce Ball, which kicks off at 2 p.m. Lewis Hamilton is just hauling himself out of his Mercedes a little bit wearily, and immediately puts his arms on his lower back after bouncing around for an hour and 45 minutes. Really struggling with that back by the looks of things, Lewis Hamilton, as he gets out of the car. Finished in 4th position, a solid enough result, but now we will hear from the top three: Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez and George Russell. There's Dutch fans cheering that you can hear, but we're going to start with, I think we're going to hear from George Russell first, and the top three are going to be speaking to Naomi Schiff in Parc Fermé after the Azerbaijan Grand Prix.
George, incredible result today. You said to me earlier 5th would be the best you could do today, but this is your 2nd podium this year. How happy are you with this result?
Yeah, as we said before, you've got to be there at the end to pick up the pieces, and thanks so much to all the guys back at Brackley and Brixworth for doing a great job to get the car to the end. It's not easy this year with everything that's going on. The cars are going through a torrid time with the bouncing, and yeah, pleased to bring it home P3.
Max, incredible result for you today. It all seemed to come together. Is this redemption for last year?
I mean, you can never make up what you lost last year, but I think today we had an incredible pace in the car. We could really look after the tires and we could chip away at it, pass for the lead. But then, of course, also maybe a tiny bit lucky, of course, with the retirement, but I think nevertheless our car was really good today, so I could have closed that gap. And then, of course, you have a race on your hands. But overall, yeah, really happy with how the balance of the car was today.
Well, it all definitely came together today. You had the ultimate pace. What was it that clicked for you today?
I don't know, just tire behavior together with just general grip, of course, of the car. And, you know, that's what you need around here, that you can look after your tires. So at the end, you know, to have a 1-2 as a team as well, really good day for us.
It seems Red Bull has the better race day car, so how confident are you heading to Canada?
I don't know, I think every weekend is a bit different, and you really have to be precise, and you really have to be on it with little things, you know, for the race management as well. So it can swing around every single race weekend.
Congrats. Checo, fantastic scoring of points today. You had the pace all weekend long, but today it didn't seem to be with you. What did that come down to?
Yeah, unfortunately we missed that virtual safety car stop. There was some miscommunication, and once we wanted it was a bit too late, and yeah, we were a bit unlucky there because that would have made up a race when we were leading. And then at the restart I just hit too much deck, I think, on that medium tire. The deck was extremely high for me, and it's something that we have to understand what happened there, because certainly Max was a lot stronger today on that medium stint. So yeah, a lot of things that we have to review from today, but it's still a very good team result.
We heard that there were instructions not to fight today, but do you think you were in a position to fight for the win today?
I think it was the right call made by the team, because at that time Max was a bit further ahead, and it was just a good team result, and you know, in this place anything can happen. So at the end of the day we managed to do a 1-2, so that's a great team result.
Congrats.
So that's Sergio Perez, Max Verstappen and George Russell speaking to Naomi Schiff after Max Verstappen wins the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Sergio Perez second, George Russell in third. Verstappen extends his lead at the top of the championship. He's got a 21-point margin over Sergio Perez, who's now up to second in the standings in the other Red Bull. Charles Leclerc retiring from the Grand Prix, his engine blowing up while he was in the lead, and he is out. And as a result, is now 34 points back from Max Verstappen in the championship. We're now going to record the Checker Flag podcast, which will have all the reaction to the Grand Prix, which you can download later on BBC Sounds or wherever you get your podcast. But an interesting race, disaster for Ferrari, but we go again in a week.